looking at some impactful winter weather, especially in our mountains. But I want to go through and go into a little bit more detail about what we can expect over the next, say, 24 to 72 hours, and then even beyond that as we look into next week as well. So if you can give me about 30 seconds to a minute, we'll get started with this update in full. But what I will show you is the loop of radar over the last 3 hours and show you some of those showers that we have been dealing with really for, excuse me, west central and southwestern Montana on those snow showers so far today. But in general, we've got, again, could see some significant impacts to travel for our mountain passes, especially those in northwest and west central Montana. But also we could be dealing with some valley impacts as well. So I want to be able to give this a little bit more time and really go into some of the details of what we can expect from this storm, and then not even just one storm. It's more of a series of pulses. 30 seconds to a minute, and we will get fully started in this. I'll just make sure everything is working here behind the scenes, and then we'll dive into this in full. But again, what you're looking at right now is the last 3 hours of radar. We've seen those scattered showers for west central and southwestern Montana. Northwestern portions of the state, for the most part, we've stayed dry today, just a few very light snow showers. This should continue to be the case as we go throughout the night, but things will start to change as we get closer into the morning hours, though really I think for, say, the Flathead Valley, very little is expected from this, at least first wave, and then we'll see tomorrow afternoon where we get a little more involved with the activity. So everything is working here behind the scenes, so thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments as we go throughout this update, feel free to ask those in the chat section, and I'll try and answer them as we go throughout this. But really what we're in is northwesterly flow, and you can see that from our satellite loop. There's a ridge of high pressure off the Pacific coast, and this is just pushing the flow in the atmosphere right down and across our area. And as it does so, we'll see multiple waves of moisture roll through the area, the first of which has been impacting the area already today. Now, right now, those temperatures are pretty close to the freezing mark, right around, say, 30, 31, 32 degrees. This is going to allow, especially for areas near and south of Interstate 90, that will allow for some light snowfall accumulations as we go throughout the night tonight. Most of our valleys, we're probably talking less than 3 inches, about 3 to 6 inches for places like Lookout, Lolo, Lost Trail passes, and maybe even some of those down into southwestern Montana as well. Now, I am going to stop radar. We've been looking at that loop, but you can see into the Missoula Valley, Highway 200 corridor, we've seen some light to occasionally moderate snowfall. We're going to continue to see this over the next couple of hours, but you notice how these pinks and greens are starting to show up right at the bottom of the Bitterroot Valley. That's going to be important as we could start to see that changeover from snow to rain and maybe even a little bit of freezing rain as we go throughout the night tonight, and that's really where our valley forecast gets more complex and more difficult to really pin down, and it's going to be hard to pin down even as we get into tomorrow morning, into Friday afternoon. We have the idea around it, but getting into the specifics of it, unfortunately, in this particular storm system, there isn't really a good definitive, like, this is what's going to happen for our valleys. Mountain passes and higher, high confidence is there for, the staying is all snowfall, but it's the valleys that are a little bit more tricky. So that's a look at west central Montana. Southwestern portions of the state, you're not seeing very much here on radar, but we have continued to see those scattered snow showers. This is our, I like to call it the dreaded radar hole. The radar isn't picking up, or at least the locations of the radar are too high to pick up on the snowfall in these areas, but it is ongoing, and we're going to continue to see that as we go throughout the night. So here are our big takeaways for this series of pushes of moisture. For tonight and into tomorrow morning, light to moderate snowfall, especially for west central and southwestern Montana, is going to be the focus. As we get into Friday afternoon and Saturday, as well as into Sunday and Monday, heavy mountain snow is expected. This is just a general 6 to 18 inches for our passes and higher. But again, I think we could see some higher totals than even that For our valleys, especially west of the divide, this is where, again, things are going to get more complex. We're going to transition eventually from snow to rain and maybe even a little bit of freezing rain. And that's, freezing rain is not something we want to deal with down in the valleys. That can make for a mess when it comes to travel. So we have widespread winter weather advisories, winter storm watches, and winter storm warnings. I'll start with the advisories. Those are for these, oops, sorry, I needed to, let me go back to that. Got a little ahead of myself. Wanted to make sure I got, there we go. So the winter weather advisories here in this kind of blue-purple shade, including places like Kalispell, Polson, Missoula, Hamilton, Darby, Butte, Deer Lodge, over towards the Drummond area, as well as up towards Georgetown Lake and the Phillipsburg area, and Bozeman and the Gallatin Valley. Those all will be running through, let me get the correct information here for you. Those should be running through 11 a.m., but I want to go through those in a little bit more detail for y'all. And I've just got this information here on this other screen. And I'll just go through these one by one. So Missoula Bitterroot Valleys, again, we're going to see these continuing through 11 a.m. on Friday morning. Missoula Bitterroot Valleys, we're looking at total snow accumulations upwards to about 3 inches. This is primarily going to be for the Missoula Valley and then on the benches of the Bitterroot Valley. We're going to see that transition from snow to rain a little bit faster into parts of the southern and central Bitterroot, which is really going to put a cap on how much snow we see there. Getting into the Butte Blackfoot region, again, this includes places like Anaconda, Deer Lodge, Butte itself, up towards Phillipsburg. We're going to be looking at the potential of up to 6 inches of snow in these areas, especially those higher elevation locations within that region. So 1 to 6 inches. I think most areas will probably be talking about 1 to 3, 1 to 4 inches with some isolated totals upwards to about 6. I'd say places like Georgetown Lake would be more likely to see 6 inches from this storm system. Then we move over to the Flathead and Mission Valleys. Again, this is through 11 a.m. tomorrow. We're looking at snow accumulations primarily down in the Mission Valley for this. They have the whole area in the advisory, but this is mostly for the Mission Valley. Generally looking at dusting upwards to about 3 to maybe 4 inches. There could be some light snowfall that works its way in by tomorrow morning to places like Kalispell, maybe towards Whitefish and Columbia Falls, but I think that likelihood is pretty slim as things stand right now, and I'll show you that here on Future Tracker here in just a few moments. Then we get down to the Elkhorn and Boulder Mountains. This is going to include places like Boulder, Clancy, Montana City, about 2 to 6 inches on average in that area through 11 a.m. on Friday. And then for the Gallatin Valley, so we're going to be looking Bozeman, Gallatin Gateway, over towards Belgrade. We're looking at the potential of 2 to 4 inches, though I wouldn't rule out the potential, especially as you get right onto the eastern side of the Gallatin Valley, of maybe 4 to 5 inches. Sometimes that area filters in a little bit more moisture with this northwesterly flow in place. So those are our winter weather advisories. Let's jump to the winter storm watches, and this is just going to be up here into the West Glacier, East Glacier Park, and the Southern Rocky Mountain front, where we have those winter storm watches. Those begin Friday afternoon and continue through Saturday morning for the West Glacier region, so that does include West Glacier, areas closer to, say, Hungry Horse, Essex. We're looking at the potential of moderate to major winter weather impacts. Total snow accumulations in this area, as well as up towards Marias Pass, could be in the 10 to 25 inch range. So some heavy snowfall is expected up there. We could even be talking wind gusts upwards to around 30 to 40 miles per hour as well. So really, I would say as you look towards Marias Pass, travel could be significantly impacted in that, again, Friday afternoon through Sunday morning time frame. Very similar type of story on the eastern side of the divide over towards Rogers Pass, the other side of Marias Pass, into places like Babb and St. Mary, East Glacier Park. We could be talking 6 to 12 inches in that area, and the winds gusting as high as 55 miles per hour. So even stronger winds as you get that downslope flow on the other side. So those are our winter storm watches, and let's finish it off with the winter storm warnings here in pink. This includes the lower Clark Fork region, Potomac Seeley Lake region, Bitterroot and Sapphire Mountains, northwest Beaver Head County, the Big Belt, Bridger, and Castle Mountains, and then the Gallatin, Madison, and Centennial Mountains, and then the Beartooth and Absaroka Mountains. So let's jump right into those, as well as the Clearwater Mountains back over into Idaho, where we could be talking about 9 to 18 inches in the higher terrain. This does include the Lolo Pass area. Same story for the Bitterroot and Sapphire Mountains. We're looking Bitterroot and Sapphire Mountains. Got a little ahead of myself there. 8 to 15 inches, Lolo, Lost Trail Pass, and then in some of the lower elevation areas within these zones, we could see about 1 to 5 inches of overall accumulation. Then we get into the Potomac-Seeley Lake region. That's this zone up in here. We're going to be looking at the potential of about 5 to 10 inches of snowfall. This includes the Highway 200 corridor from Bonner to Greeno, Interstate 90 from East Missoula over to the Bearmouth area, just as you get into Drummond, and then Highway 83 from Condon to Seeley Lake, where we could see some more significant impacts even in some of the lower elevation areas of that zone. Then the lower Clark Fork region, this is taking us west of Missoula up towards places like Haugen, St. Regis, Thompson Falls, Knoxon, Heron, Trout Creek. We're going to be looking at about 1 to 4 inches of snow in the valley areas, with 8 to 14 in the higher terrain. So looking at Lookout Pass, Evero Hill. I think towards Lookout Pass, we may even be higher than that, so higher than that 14-inch total that's being specified by the warning. And then we get into the mountains of southwest Montana, where we're going to be, this includes northwest Beaver Head County, we're going to be looking at about 2 to 6 inches of snow in the Big Hole Valley, 8 to 15 inches at pass levels. So we're going to be talking 8 to 15 for places like Big Hole Pass, Chief Joseph Pass, over towards Lost Trail Pass. Taking it over further off to the east, we're talking this zone, north and south of Bozeman. We're going to be looking at 8 to 12 inches at pass level, and above that we could be talking 1 to 2 feet of snowfall down across southwestern Montana. So, like I said, really the long story short through all of those advisories, watches, warnings, heavy mountain snow is expected above 4,500 to 5,000 feet. Down in our valleys, a little bit less likelihood of seeing heavy snowfall, but still adjusting upwards to 4 inches can't be ruled out in all of those zones. So that was a kind of a water hose of information. So again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask those in the chat section. And all of the information for these advisories, watches, and warnings are all in detail at nbcmontana.com/weather. So you can go back and reference all of those as we go over the next couple of days. So let's go into the timing of this storm system and jump right into Future Tracker. It's done a good job picking up on the majority of this moisture. Again, Highway 200, Interstate 90, and south has been the focus of that through the day with this northwesterly flow. That will continue to be the case. I think most of northwest Montana, we stay quiet tonight. And as we get beyond, say, 3, 4 o'clock, you notice how these showers really start to taper off. The first wave of moisture starts to push off to the east, and we start to quiet down for a short period of time. It's only going to be a couple of hours. We're still going to be dealing with some light flurries across the area, but then we get into about midday tomorrow, and you can see that next push of moisture coming from west to east across the region. And this is going to be our big system, or at least I'll say the biggest of the three as it looks like right now. Friday afternoon into Saturday. So I'm going to stop this right here at about 4 o'clock, and I want to point out a couple of things. One, you see some pretty dark blues showing up right along the state line back over into Idaho. That's where we are going to be looking at that heaviest snowfall occurring places like Lookout, Lolo, Lost Trail Pass, as well as maybe even down as we get into parts of southwest Montana's passes, Monida, Reynolds, Targhee passes, and up towards Marias Pass as well. So again, pretty straightforward forecast when it comes to our mountains, heavy snowfall. But you notice the greens and the pinks showing up here. Highway 200, US 93, both north and south of Missoula. We are going to likely transition from snow to rain at some point tomorrow in these areas. It's just, when does that happen? In the morning, there is a window. We could see some freezing rain try to mix in. That one's still a big question mark for tomorrow. But be prepared at least for the potential, the low potential of freezing rain for tomorrow morning into tomorrow midday as those snow levels start to rise. But the one thing we'll have to just watch for is when does that transition over from snow to rain into the afternoon. If it happens before the bulk of this moisture gets in here, snow amounts will pretty much be, will be done at that point for places like Missoula and Hamilton. If it holds off until a little bit later, say 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we could get a quick burst of snow before we transition over to that rain. It is going to happen. It's just, again, a matter of when that happens, not so much a matter of if. Kalispell, Libby, we're going to be looking at that snow sticking around likely into Friday afternoon and maybe even Friday evening. Looking here, 4 o'clock, we're still snow, and maybe even as far north or as far south as, say, Polson, we could still be dealing with that primary precipitation type as snow. But that's going to change as we go throughout the night, or at least more than likely that will change. There is still a window where it doesn't happen, but I think that's looking less and less likely. Especially as we get into Friday night. Kalispell, we're still snow at this point, but you see up here towards Troy and Libby, we're starting to get the greens in there. We're starting to see that transition over. And then we get into Friday evening, and this is one part of the forecast that the National Weather Service did mention that's going to be really interesting to watch. We're going to see that transition from snow to rain, but do we transition back to a little bit of snow as you see these bands start to develop, these northwest to southeast bands? That may help to bring those snow levels back down to valley floors, but we just don't know if that's going to happen or how this really all plays out. But the potential is there that as we get into Friday evening, we see another quick burst of snow as this second wave pushes through. But we're still going to be looking at heavy mountain snow throughout this whole period. But yeah, you notice how it just kind of breaks down from a general wall of moisture, like you're seeing here at 3:30, 4 o'clock, to these narrow bands of heavy precipitation. Where those set up, we'll get more of that snowfall, more of that rainfall, but the areas around that may not see a whole lot. So it just comes down to where do those develop, where do those set up, and do they develop at all? As we go into Friday night, though, you notice how even up here into the Flathead Valley, we transition over to rain. So this is looking, say, 9 to 11 o'clock. This is where we should be talking about all rain at this point, as those temperatures continue to gradually climb. But overnight, we may see another little drop in temperatures, and if those fall to freezing, if not a little bit below freezing, this is where we have that window for freezing rain late Friday night into Saturday morning, and that could lead to some pretty nasty road conditions as we begin the day on Saturday. That's all a possibility. Let me jump into southwest Montana. I haven't really mentioned a whole lot, and I need to. We aren't going to be dealing with the freezing rain issues down here. It's just going to either be more than likely, just be rain or snow. For our valleys, places like Bozeman, we're likely going to be looking at rain at this point by the time we get into Saturday morning. Though some snow will still be possible, more likely as you get higher in elevation, closer to, say, Butte and Anaconda. We'll continue to see those showers as we go into Saturday morning. Pretty scattered in nature. Everybody will have the chance for some of this moisture. One note, though, and this is another note back here for areas along the US 93 corridor. You see how there's a pretty distinct lack of moisture right in the valleys. We could see some strong winds, gusting 25 to 45 miles per hour, and with the way that the flow is going to be coming off the mountains, we could see downslope flow that may help to evaporate a lot of the moisture on the US 93 corridor. That's one little change in the forecast as compared to, say, this time yesterday, where the angle of it's a little bit different, to where we could see that downslope flow take place, which may limit the amount of moisture that we see in the valleys, which may actually be good news as we get into Saturday midday, Saturday afternoon. I know we've got some big events going on across the region. We've got the Christmas stroll out in Bozeman. We've got the FCS playoffs with both the Montana Grizzlies and Montana State Bobcats hosting those games into the early afternoon. And then Montana Tech over in Butte has their I think quarterfinal matchup in the NAIA playoffs. So it's not really a great weekend to have all of this active weather ongoing, especially with people traveling to these locations for these events. It's not necessarily the best. But like I was saying, we could see some of that downslope flow for areas west of the divide. It may cut off a lot of that moisture as we head into Saturday morning, Saturday midday. So you notice as we get into about lunchtime, pretty dry for Missoula, pretty dry for Butte, pretty dry for Bozeman. So this could bear some at least good news for a lot of those events around midday, those football games across the region. But we're still going to be talking about heavy snow right along the Montana-Idaho state line and then up into the Mission, Swan, Mountains, Glacier National Park areas as well. We'll likely see another push of moisture as we get into Saturday evening. This may help to bring some of that moisture as we get into the evening hours back into places like Kalispell, Polson, Missoula, and Hamilton, but it likely will be a bit lighter in comparison to what we're going to be seeing tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, and maybe even into Saturday morning. We could see another round of snow bands try to develop again across west central and northwestern Montana, a little bit more isolated as we get into southwestern portions of the state, but this may help to try and drag those snow levels back down to near valley floors once again before things really start to quiet down into Sunday morning outside of some mountain showers. But again, this is another pretty short break as we are going to see more of that moving in as we get into the Sunday and Monday time frame. So looking at snowfall totals, I'm going to start this. This is looking into, let's go to Saturday afternoon. So this includes everything additional that we could see tonight and what we could see tomorrow. Looking, I think in general, valleys, we're talking a dusting upwards to 4 inches, like I mentioned. Bozeman, this may be a tad underdone. Kalispell, 3 to 6 inches. I think it may be just a hair overdone on the high side of that, but still, in general, a dusting upwards to about 4 inches is going to be common across the region as we get into, say, Saturday morning. And by Saturday afternoon, for the most part, our valleys have transitioned over to rain outside of our higher elevation valleys, places like Seeley Lake, back over to Butte and areas along the divide. And that continues into Sunday. Passes is where things get a little more, I don't want to use the word extreme, but we see a lot higher in the way of snowfall totals. So you notice into tomorrow, upwards to about 3 inches for tomorrow morning for our passes. Not looking at significant impacts. Some minor travel impacts can't be ruled out. But it's as we get into Friday afternoon and Saturday morning, you see these totals really start to ramp up, especially those here along the state line. So going into Saturday evening, look out Lolo Pass. We're talking potentially 12 to 16 inches of snow in these areas, 5 to 10 for Marias, Lost Trail, 4 to 8 over towards Bozeman, and then Rogers down to Menida, maybe more in that 1 to 4 inch range. So the bulk of this moisture is going to be located in this zone, northwest, west central Montana, and then down towards Bozeman Pass. But we'll likely see even more of that as we go beyond the forecast distance on this particular model. But as we go into Sunday afternoon, Monday, we'll see even more of that moisture roll through. So looking at those past travel impacts, really I'm going to say this for all of our passes, but the focus will be for those along the Montana-Idaho state line and then up towards Marias Pass. We're going to see slick conditions tonight and into tomorrow morning. No two ways around it with the accumulating snowfall that we are going to see. But as we go from Friday afternoon and evening into Saturday, this is where we're going to see those road conditions really start to fall off. We're going to be looking at significant impacts in those areas and potentially dangerous conditions. There was even the word thrown out in some of the forecasts from the National Weather Service of near impassable type of conditions. So really, as long as you don't have absolutely necessary travel that goes over the passes Friday night into Saturday morning and even into Saturday afternoon, if you can delay that until Sunday or even leave, say tonight, probably is going to be better than to try and travel during that time frame. Again, Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon and maybe even into Sunday morning, is going to be the worst of that. So again, delay travel if you can, but if you must go, make sure to have an emergency kit. Have things like blankets in your car, have an extra coat, have some snacks, food, water, just in case you were to go off the road. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully there's no issues whatsoever, but with that potential being there, certainly make sure to just be as prepared as you can. And with these roads becoming icier as we go throughout the next 24 to 48 hours, it doesn't take much to create, make a safe, smooth drive turn into a really scary situation very quickly. So just really, that's my advice, is just, if you must be out, take it slow, be really, really safe. But if you can avoid traveling over our passes, again, look out Lolo, Lost Trail, Marias, even Bozeman Pass in that Friday to Saturday time frame. That would be the best advice that I could give. Those precipitation chances are staying very high over the next 5 to 6 days. Friday, Saturday, we're right around that, say, 70 to 90% likelihood across the region. We start to drop off a little bit Sunday into Monday, but still better than 50-50 shot, especially for areas west of the divide. And then our next storm system moves in for Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's going to be a little bit of a different storm. So you see, here's all that moisture Friday into Saturday. We quiet down a little bit into Sunday morning, but here comes the next wave Sunday night into Monday. This will primarily be valley rain once again, with mountain snow, moderate to heavy at times. Things quiet down a little bit Monday into Tuesday, especially in southwest Montana. But then we've got this storm system back into British Columbia, Washington, and northern Oregon. And this is going to be an atmospheric river, or at least as it's forecasted right now, to reach that criteria. That's going to be moving through as we head into Tuesday, and snow levels are likely going to be quite high, potentially as high as, say, 5,000 to 7,000 feet. So valleys at this point during the day, it's all going to be rain, and some of this could be heavy rain at that. But with those snow levels as high as they are, we could be dealing with snow with rain on top of it, just running off the mountains and then working our way in. So there could be some ponding on the roads. There could be some issues with some maybe minor flooding with how much snow we could see in our mountains, followed up by some heavy rainfall, maybe a half an inch to an inch in a few locations. So that'll be something we have to watch out for. But that's going to be as we head into next week, Tuesday into Wednesday. But look at those high temperatures. We're talking mid to upper 40s across the region into next week. So well above average warmth is on its way. We're going to be talking anywhere from, say, 7 to 15 degrees warmer than what we would be normally for this time of the year. In the overnight period, we could see those temperatures falling back down to near freezing. So we could see a little bit of snow mix in, but I think really the focus is going to be for the rain as we get into next week, but that transition from snow to rain as we head into tomorrow. So this is the last graphic that I had. Thanks for spending about a half an hour with me tonight. I'm going to start wrapping this up, but again, last call. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask those in the chat section. I'll try and answer them really quickly, but some key takeaways. Road conditions are only going to worsen over the next, say, 12 to 36 hours. Tonight and into tomorrow morning, slick to rough conditions over our passes are going to be common, especially those across west central and southwestern Montana. Valleys with the refreeze overnight, that could be more of our issue for tomorrow morning. But then Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon is going to be the peak of this storm system. Significant travel impacts over our passes are likely. Places like Lookout Lolo, Lost Trail, Marias passes, we could be talking about anywhere from 8 to as much as 18 inches, and maybe in some isolated totals closer to 2 feet, even at pass level. We're more likely to see those 1 to 3 foot snowfall totals as you get, say, 6,000 feet and above. But again, 8 to 18 inches is nothing to sneeze at. That could create some big time travel impacts. And on top of that, you could be also dealing with winds 30 to perhaps as high as 50, 55 miles per hour. So that adds an extra level of problem with blowing snow, reduced visibility, icy roads, snow-covered roads. And again, Friday afternoon through Sunday morning, probably not the best time to be hitting the roads to go over the passes. Valleys probably won't be too bad. We'll be primarily looking at rain though Saturday morning we will have that potential for some freezing rain, especially for our valleys west of the divide. So, key takeaways with that, in addition to the travel impacts. Tonight into tomorrow morning, light to moderate snowfall, some slick conditions for the morning commute certainly are going to be there across west central and southwest Montana. Places like Kalispell, likely we don't get involved with the snow until we get to tomorrow afternoon with that next wave of moisture that rolls through. And for places like Kalispell, we may not even see that transition from snow to rain until we get to tomorrow night. So we could pick up a quick burst of snowfall really from the central parts of Flathead Lake and north, where we see maybe 1 to 3 inches tomorrow before we transition over to rain into the overnight period. Further to the south, the Highway 200 corridor, US 93, from Polson back down through Missoula, Hamilton, Darby, will likely be transitioning from snow to rain as we go throughout the day. The southern Bitterroot Valley, that may occur as early as tonight into early tomorrow morning. And then as we get closer into, I'd say 10 to 1 o'clock tomorrow, that'll be lifting further and further north through the area. Still could see a quick burst of snow in places like Missoula up towards our Lee, the Mission Valley, into the early afternoon, but that's still one of those we just kind of have to watch and see. Eventually that snow will transition over to rain, and then we get that potential for freezing rain as those temperatures cool back down in our valleys for Saturday morning, and that could create some travel nightmares if we do get that freezing rain. The likelihood of that right now is relatively low, still looking at probably anywhere from 15 to 30%, but that is still a chance, and it's one that we need to take seriously. Hopefully we don't have to deal with it at all. But that is where I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all again for spending about a half an hour with me. Hopefully I answered some questions, went through this information that's in a little bit more depth than what I can in a, say, 3-minute weather hit on our, on our live broadcasts. But this gives me a chance to really dive into why everything is happening and why there's so much complexity into the forecast and what's making this one especially difficult with our valleys and that potential for that warm nose to sort of settle its way in. Let me get my train of thought back on there. With that warm nose starting to move in and that potential for freezing rain, it's hard to convey that in a short period of time, especially with everything else that I need to get out, especially with those impacts on the mountain passes. But this gives me that opportunity to really dive into the complexities of the forecast and go. It's not a slam dunk forecast by any means for our valleys. But that said, the mountains getting some very beneficial snow as we go over the next, say, 72 hours and likely into the early parts of next week. And then we'll have to watch and see what happens with all that rain next week and how high those snow levels get, and do we see a lot of that fresh snow that we just got start to get run off and pulled back down into our valleys, and that could lead to a whole nother set of issues, but that is when we have a little bit of time. Good to see you live. Hey, thanks for watching. Again, appreciate it. And we'll be here to get you through this storm. And we'll have some more information, for latest news and weather updates as we go into our 10 o'clock show tonight. So tune in for that. And then, of course, tomorrow morning, NBC Montana Today with Chief Meteorologist Brooke Foster and Jason Hurst. They'll have the latest news and weather updates. And then Brooke will be absolutely watching those road conditions for tomorrow morning and looking ahead to the weekend. Again, like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on. We've got Christmas strolls in Bozeman, in Butte. We've got holidays on Higgins on Saturday in Missoula. We've got multiple events going up in the Flathead Valley, and then of course we have the FCS and NAIA playoffs with Montana, Montana Tech, and Montana State all playing at home in some very big games this weekend. So hopefully we can keep the worst of the wet weather, the rain and the snow, away from the valleys as we get into that midday Saturday evening time frame. But probably best to be prepared for wet weather and keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't happen, because right now we are starting to get some indications that we may get a bit of a break from the heaviest of the precipitation in the valleys as we get into the afternoon hours. So I'll certainly keep a close eye on that one as we head throughout the night tonight and into tomorrow. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Have a great evening. If you're hitting the roads, stay safe out there, and I'll see you all on the next one. With NBC Montana, I'm meteorologist Mitchell Coombs.